Hello my bookworms, welcome back to my channel. My name is Sydney. In today's video, we are going over all of my favorite books that I read in 2021. So hey, what's up? How are you? I hope you're doing well. I hope that your holiday season is off to a fantastic start. Thank you so much for being here and hanging out with me for a little bit. There are so many books that I want to talk about in this video. So what we're gonna do, I tried my very darndest to narrow it down to 10 books. I tried really hard. So we're going to talk about my top 10 favorite books that I read in 2021. And then I have quite a few honorable mentions that I'm just gonna kind of like breeze through. You know what I'm saying? Like I'm just gonna be like, and this book, and not go into too much detail because this video would be probably over an hour long if I said everything I want to say about each and every one of these books. So I hope you have a snack, a drink, let us settle in and talk about my favorite reads. The first book that I want to talk about that is one of my favorite books of all time now. I'm literally designing a tattoo for my arm pretty much off this book. Not like entirely, but this book solidified what I wanted for my tattoo. You'll catch my drift. And that book, friends, is The Once and Future Witches by Alex E. Harrow. I love this book. I seriously would die for these sisters. In this story, we follow our main three characters who are sisters. They are James Juniper, Beatrice Belladonna, and Agnes Amaranth. Ultimately, in their childhood, they got separated, and now as adults, they are finding themselves in the same city of New Salem. And in the city, they are joining pretty much the women's movement, which is like fighting for women's right to vote, etc. However, this women's movement is beginning to turn into the witches movement, as these sisters remember and kind of harness the forgotten words and ways of magic. And basically, they're going to have to harness these words and ways, draw new alliances, delve into the oldest magics, and heal their bond if they want to survive. And this book is so atmospheric. Like, if you have the ability and the willpower to wait to read this book until it is fall where you live, if you have a fall season, do that. Because I read this during the fall. It was when all of the leaves outside were changing colors, and this book like is exactly fall vibes. These characters are just written so beautifully, and it also has LGBT representation. There was just nothing that I didn't love about this book. I thought it was beautiful, I thought it was powerful, and I just had the best time reading it. If you're wondering about the tattoo, I planned on getting a portrait style of a woman here in March. It's actually booked, and I kind of want it based off of like at least one of the sisters in this book. Like, you'll see it when you see it, but I'm very excited. The next book that I want to talk about, we won't be surprised. I mean, if you have been here, you know some of the books that I'm going to talk about. And this next one, say it with me, it's Bunny by Mona Awad. I am trash for this book. I think that this book is absolutely bizarre, absurd, and perfect. Basically, in the story, our main character is Samantha, and she is in a highly like elite selective MFA program in England, I think. New England. And in the class, it's just her and this other group of girls who are very strange. These girls are very cliquey. They call each other Bunny. And in the beginning, obviously, like, Samantha is not about them. She thinks they're annoying. She doesn't understand them. But then eventually the bunnies decide to invite Samantha to their after-hours smut salon, is what they call it, where they basically do culty things and they conjure their monstrous creations where the edges of reality start to blur. And boy, does it get blurry. This book is bizarre. It is like, I don't know what to tell you about it other than I was laughing out loud while I was reading it because it was not funny. Like, there's nothing really like super like comical about it, but I was laughing just at some of the things that were happening. It was just like so absurd. I was like, how is someone thinking of these situations and how Mona Awad was writing them? It was just brilliant. Brilliant. I love this book. This is for sure one of my favorites. The next one that I want to talk about is, I never thought that a romance book would actually be on my favorite books of all time, but now it is. Damn it. It is Beach Read by Emily Henry. I love Emily Henry. I think People We Meet on Vacation was also fantastic, but Beach Read is my favorite of the two, absolutely for sure. In this one, our main two characters are staying the summer or for like a few weeks or whatever at neighboring beach houses. They're both writers. January Andrews writes women's literary fiction, so like romance basically, and then our other main character, Augustus Everett, writes best-selling literary fiction. They're both experiencing some sort of like writer's block, and ultimately they decide to swap genres and write a new story. And this book to me was so much more than just like a romance book, because yes, the romance is prevalent in the story, but there is so much more that goes on. It's a messy story. It talks about each of their like personal past lives and goes really deep into like the things that each of them are struggling with, and those struggles like kind of come head to head with what's currently going on in the story and so on and so forth. This book made me sob. Like, I actually cried towards the end of it. And I don't do that often at all. I'm really good at like disassociating myself from my emotions. But yeah, this book, I thought it was absolutely fantastic. I loved it. It was a 5 out of 5. I will read absolutely anything that Emily Henry puts out. Absolutely. The next book that is on my top 10 favorite books of 2021 is Kingdom of Flesh and Fire. I love this book. It was the perfect amount of action, battle, romance, smut, characters, and just plot. Like, I think that this book was perfect. I really wouldn't change anything about it. I can't say the same for the other editions in the series, but I love this one. And that being said, this is book 2 in the Poppy War series. No, it's not. Book 2 in the Kingdom of Flesh. No, it's not. What is the first fucking book? This is book 2 in the From Blood and Ash series. And basically, I'll tell you what the first book is about, like the general overview of the series. It is a fantasy romance. Adult for sure. And we have our main character Poppy, who is the maiden. This basically just means that she has been chosen by the gods and she has to wait for her ascension to see if she has been deemed worthy. Now, in order to be deemed worthy, she must not experience any sort of pleasure, touch, happiness, or like no one's able to talk to her or anything. And she gets this bodyguard named Hawk, who is ultimately tempting her with all of these things. And then it just goes on from there. And this one in particular, the pacing was fantastic. I really loved how the plot was moving forward in pretty much every chapter. I loved the character developments, and just the smut was really good. All right, everything was really good in this book. The next one that I want to talk about is another one that you won't be surprised to see, and that's totally fine, but it is Catherine House by Elizabeth Thomas. Oh, Catherine House. This one, the atmosphere in this story is just absolutely phenomenal. I read this in pretty much one day, and I remember after I finished it, I had to physically like leave the room and decompress for like an hour because I felt like I was living at Catherine House. I felt so like under the spell of this book, because it's also like, it's kind of similar to Bunny in a sense that it's a little bit absurd and the plot is a little bit all over the place at times, but like that plays into the factor of like what Catherine House is and what's going on within the walls of it. So I was along for the ride and I enjoyed every second of it. So Catherine House basically is this school that is highly selective in its admission process, and if you are lucky enough to be accepted, you have to basically give up absolutely everything for 3 years, including summers. You have no contact with the outside world. But it is known that people who successfully graduate Catherine House become to be some of the most important people in the present day. And our primary main character is Inez, who grew up not really knowing like family or home very well. And so she has no problem being admitted into Catherine House in a sense of leaving everything behind because she didn't have much to begin with. And then her roommate is named Baby. Baby starts to kind of get obsessed with things that are going on in the school and leads her down a dangerous path. And Inez basically kind of gets roped into it, and it's all kind of messy and bizarre. Also because the director of the school, Victoria, encourages their students to like drink, do drugs, like do everything to kind of expand your mind. And I could say more things, but I don't want to give you too much to go off of in case you like to go into books a little bit blind. So this book has just a lot of gothic and culty vibes because there are some chanting, and if you can listen to the audio while reading it, I think that you should, because it will enhance your experience while reading this book 10 times. Yeah, I think that the chanting, hearing it said in my ears, like really hypnotized me. Like it was bizarre. Great experience. The next book that I want to talk about is City of Brass by Ashely Chakraborty. I read this pretty early in the year of 2021, and I've said it quite a few times here on my channel that this book is phenomenal. The pacing in the story is unlike anything I've ever read. It was perfection. Every single page I was pretty much glued to because even if something like super exciting wasn't happening on the page, there was always something to pay attention to or something to learn about this culture, about the magic system, about the politics that are going on. S.A. Chakraborty just really did that. This book is set in 18th century Cairo, in which our main character's name is Nari, and she's basically like a really successful con woman. And she ultimately, on one of her cons, meets a mysterious jinn warrior named Dara. The pair are forced to flee Cairo across the mystical sands to Daevabad, or the legendary city of brass. The city of brass is a city steeped in magic and fire, where blood can be as dangerous as any spell. A city where old resentments run deep and royal court rules with a tenuous grip. A city to which Nari is irrevocably bound, and where her very presence threatens to ignite a war that has been simmering for centuries. I need to continue this series. It's absurd that I haven't already. I am just nervous. It makes me nervous because this book was so good, and I know everyone says that the following installments are pretty much just as good. I just don't want it to end. I'm nervous to finish it because I don't know what I'll do with myself after. The next book that I want to talk about as one of my favorites in 2021 was The Death of Vivec Ogee by Akwaeke Emezi. This was another book that made me cry. I remember reading it. It was just absolutely fantastic. I've loved everything that Akwaeke Emezi has put out, and this book I'm never able to summarize well at all, so I'm just gonna read like 2 quotes from the inside to try to draw you in, because this book really does deserve your attention, and so does this author. They are absolutely incredible. The catchphrase of the book is, "What does it mean for a family to lose a child they never really knew?" The Death of Vivec Ogee is a novel of family, friendship, and the self that challenges expectations, a dramatic story of loss and transcendence that will move every reader. And that is damn true. It was beautiful, absolutely beautiful, heartbreaking, but beautiful. The next book that I want to talk about for best reads of 2021, I just finished it like last week or so, and that is The Hero of Ages. It is book 3 in the Mistborn trilogy by Brandy Sandy. Books 1 and 2 were just okay for me. Book 1, okay, let me backtrack. Book 1 was good. It was very interesting, and I did give it like, I think I gave it a 5 out of 5 on Goodreads. I would give it a 4 personally, just because the longer that I've sat with it, I've kind of forgotten it a little bit. And then book 2, I think I would give that book a 3. So the series overall wasn't off to a great start, but then The Hero of Ages came around and flipped that on its head, because this book was fantastic. And this one is kind of similar to City of Brass in my opinions, because I feel like the pacing in The Hero of Ages was absolutely phenomenal. All of the characters that we were following that continued to develop throughout the trilogy, and the new ones that we started following in this book, they were just so great. Book 2, honestly, The Well of Ascension, I think that that book could have been a lot shorter. I don't know, that could just be me. I just was a little bit bored sometimes in the second book because it was so political, which is fine, I understand the importance. However, this book just had so much going on, and it was all timed so nicely. Like, again, the pacing between the conflicts, the character arcs, the plot twists, and just like new things that were happening in the story, like they kept coming at really, really great times. And this book made me really excited to like come home and read, which is always a great feeling. So I did obviously give this a 5 out of 5. I thought that it was an amazing wrap up to this trilogy and made me hold it in higher regards, so to say. Okay, the next books that I want to kind of mention of favorites of 2021. I have no idea where the other one is. I've looked for it for probably 15 minutes and I have no idea. But I would choose one of these 2 books to hold a spot in the top 10. And I say one of these 2 books because I can't pick. I can't decide which one I like more because they each have their own merits of things that I like. So that being said, the first one is Daisy Jones and the Six by Taylor Jenkins Reid, and the other one was The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. So both of these books were phenomenal. I read Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo first. That was my first book by Taylor Jenkins Reid and made me fall in love with her. Absolutely. And even though I was a little bit nervous to read Daisy Jones and the Six, because I just historically don't really like stories with like a heavy music influence in the main story, I guess. I don't know. I never really liked that. I never really thought that I would be into stories with that, but boy howdy, I was. And I think that a major factor of me loving Daisy Jones and the Six is because it was so messy and very focused on the characters. And then the same with The Seven Husbands. Like, that story was also eclectically messy, and it actually did make me cry a little bit too. Wow. So both of these books by Taylor Jenkins Reid were for sure up there on my favorites of the year. Take your pick on whichever one you want to choose for me, but I couldn't pick between the two of them, so you're getting both of them. Okay, and we have made it to kind of like my favorite book of the year, which this is kind of crazy because I genuinely, when I was sitting down trying to make this list about an hour ago, I wasn't entirely sure of what my #1 book of the year was. Because last year I knew right away. I mean, it was Crescent City, House of Earth and Blood. Like, there was no contest. But this year I read so many like really great books, but I just wasn't sure of like which one was my favorite. So sitting here, I kind of went through process of elimination of like what I would be comfortable with. Sane was my favorite book of 2021, and I think that I am confident. I think I'm comfortable in saying this. And that book is The Starless Sea by Erin Morgenstern. It took me too long to read this book. It took me too long because this book is great. It's beautiful. The writing in this story is some of the most lyrical, poetic, flowery that I have ever read. I think that I decided to officially choose this as my favorite book because I remember sitting down reading this and I was probably like 2/4, that's a half. I don't know, a little less than halfway done with it. And I remember sitting there looking over at Caleb and saying, I don't know if I will ever love a book as much as I love this one. And I remember really meaning that. I remember the emotions that I was feeling when I said that sentence. And so obviously that has to hold some sort of sustenance to it. You know what I'm saying? I really love when a book has really beautiful poetic writing. And this was like top notch. This was top tier of lyrical writing for me. In addition to that though, the story itself was so many things. It was mysterious. It was exciting. It was adventurous. We went to so many different places in this story. It got a little weird sometimes, so it had that little bit of strangeness that I really love. And it was magical. It was magical because all of the places that we were going were just like fantastical. In this story, our main character is Zachary Ezra Rollins, and he stumbles across a strange, like unregistered book in his university library. And it basically sends him on this whole quest and journey because within the pages, he finds a recollection from his own childhood. He's determined to kind of crack the code of what is going on with this book, so he decides to follow the clues that are on the cover of the book, which is a bee, a key, and a sword. And then he stumbles into Mirabelle, one of our other main characters, Daryan as well, and ultimately it is a story of going through magical doorways to faraway lands and ideas, and it's just fantastic. The final like paragraph of the synopsis is my favorite thing in the world. It says, "You are invited to join Zachary on the Starless Sea, the home of the storytellers, story lovers, and those who will protect our stories at all costs." It was so good. It was so good. I love this book. It was just beautiful. Some of my other like favorite reads of 2021, just like a quick little rapid fire, you know what I'm saying? The honorable mentions, if you will. These next 3 books were so close to being in the top 10, so that's why I want to mention them first, because like some of these can shift and move depending on like the vibe or the mood that I'm feeling. But another one that I loved this year was obviously Priory of the Orange Tree. It was phenomenal. The story itself was super easy to follow, which I was pleasantly surprised about, and I just loved it. Of course, there were dragons in it. How could I not love it? Another one I absolutely loved was Clap When You Land by Elizabeth Acevedo. And then also, believe it or not, Ready Player One. Fantastic. I wonder why I didn't read it before, but I'm so glad that I did because it was phenomenal. I love this book. Some more favorites from this past year have been Honey Girl by Morgan Rogers, Down Among the Sticks and Bones by Shannah McGuire, Annihilation by Jeff Vandermeer, Red Rising by Pierce Brown, Sleeping Giants by Sylvia Novelle. I have no idea where it is in the room, but They Never Learn by Lane Fargo, Rock Paper Scissors by Alice Feeney. And then I am reading 2 books this month in December that I think really could have made this list, so I'm just gonna mention them because I've started both of them and I'm getting really good vibes from them, and that is Razorblade Tears by S.A. Cosby, as well as The Keeper of Night by Kylie Lee Baker. Another honorable mention was Black Girl Unlimited by Echo Brown. I think about that book so often. It was absolutely phenomenal. That's it. Those are my favorite books of 2021. Let me just show you this beautiful stack of beautiful books. Wow, stunning. Also heavy. I really like thick books. And of course, don't forget the honorable mentions. I would recommend every single one of these books to the moon and back. So that's it. That's all of it. Thank you so much for being here and hanging out with me for a little bit. Down below, let me know what your favorite reads were of 2021. I would love to see. And let me know if you agree with any of mine. If you don't know what your favorite read is, then why don't you just leave a star emoji down below in the comments. But thank you so much. Don't forget to subscribe and like the video. I always appreciate your support. And of course, be kind to one another and happy reading. Bye.